What if I told you the very freedom you've been searching for is hidden in the harshest truth of life, that no one truly cares about you? And before you turn away, let me promise you this. Once you understand this truth, life becomes simpler, lighter, and more powerful than you ever imagined. When you release yourself from the chains of waiting for others to care, a burden falls from your shoulders. Expectations are the silent thieves of joy, and they operate so quietly that you don't even realize the weight until you've been crushed under it for years. Think about how often you found yourself hoping someone would notice the effort you poured into something. Maybe you cooked a meal and waited for a compliment. Maybe you helped someone through their storm and waited for the gratitude that never arrived. Maybe you stood by someone, loyal and present, and expected they would one day return the favor when you needed them most. And when they didn't, how heavy did the disappointment feel? This is the way expectations break us. Not because people are cruel, but because people are human. They are too wrapped in their own lives to measure, weigh, and respond to yours in the way you desire. They are too consumed with their own hunger to stop and feed your heart. And yet, when you recognize that this is the way of the world, you set yourself free. You understand that the moment you stop expecting applause, every silence feels lighter. The moment you stop waiting for validation, every genuine word feels like a gift. The moment you release yourself from needing to be seen, you can finally see yourself. Life becomes infinitely simpler when you do things because you want to do them, not because you hope someone will clap. The truth is, the applause you crave is temporary even when it comes. It cannot fill the emptiness inside you for long, and you'll find yourself chasing it again and again. But when your actions come from a place of authenticity, from a place where your soul says, "This is right, this is good, this is what I must do," then even if the room is silent, you can stand tall. You can rest at night knowing you moved with integrity, not performance. The weight of expectations grows heaviest in our closest relationships. We expect family to care, to check in, to stand with us. We expect friends to understand without explanation. We expect partners to know when we're hurting without a word spoken. But human beings are not mind readers, and love, real love, is not measured by how well someone meets our unspoken expectations. When you release those hidden demands, you create space for gratitude. Suddenly, when a friend calls, it feels like a blessing, not a requirement. When someone shows up, it feels like abundance, not an obligation fulfilled. It is easy to believe that expectations are necessary, that without them people would never rise to kindness. But the truth is, when you free people from the weight of your expectations, you allow them to love you more genuinely. A gift only feels like a gift when it isn't demanded. A kind gesture only feels like kindness when it isn't owed. When people choose to care without the shadow of expectation, their love shines brighter. And when they don't, you are not shattered because you never expected them to. Think about how many arguments, how many heartbreaks, how many disappointments were born not from cruelty, but from unmet expectations. You expected someone to remember. You expected someone to prioritize you. You expected someone to carry a piece of your burden. And when they didn't, it hurt more than the situation itself. But what if, instead of expecting, you allowed people to be who they are? What if you stopped measuring their actions against an invisible ruler they never agreed to hold? You would discover that your peace is no longer tied to their behavior. You would be untangled from the exhausting cycle of waiting for people to be what you think they should be. This is not about giving up on people. It is about giving yourself back to yourself. You do not live in chains, waiting for someone else to set you free. You live in freedom, choosing to set yourself free by expecting nothing and appreciating everything. This shift transforms your spirit. It takes you from a place of constant disappointment to a place of constant gratitude. Because even the smallest gestures, a smile, a word, a moment of presence, feel monumental when you aren't demanding them. Releasing expectations also frees you from bitterness. How many times have you looked at someone and thought, after all I've done for them, how could they? That is the voice of expectation, not betrayal. You gave with the secret hope of return, and when it didn't come, you felt wounded. But when you give because giving is in your nature, when you help because helping is your character, you are never robbed. Nothing was taken from you because you never asked for anything back. In that freedom, you can continue to love, to give, to serve, not because others deserve it, but because it is who you are. The irony is that when you release expectations, you gain more than you lose. You gain peace. You gain joy. You gain the strength to live without waiting for anyone to lift you. And strangely enough, you even gain deeper relationships because you are no longer weighing them down with unspoken demands. People feel lighter around you, freer around you, because they know your love does not come with strings. And the right ones, the rare ones, will meet you with the same freedom. Ask yourself, how many moments of your life have been wasted waiting for someone to care, someone to notice, someone to give you what you thought you deserved? How many nights have you gone to bed angry or sad because someone didn't meet an expectation you never even spoke? How many dreams have you delayed because you were waiting for the support of others before you took the first step? Now imagine a life where none of that weighed you down. Imagine waking up with no expectation of praise, of recognition, of assistance, and yet moving boldly anyway. Imagine the lightness of doing because it is yours to do, living because it is yours to live. That is freedom. That is what it means to live unshackled from the invisible chains of expectation. And when you live this way, when you strip your life of those hidden demands, everything indeed becomes simpler. Conversations become simpler because you are not dissecting every word for hidden meaning. Relationships become simpler because you are not tallying debts of care and affection. Success becomes simpler because you are no longer performing for applause. Even failures become simpler because you don't collapse under the weight of imagined judgments. Life in all its chaos becomes simpler because you have stopped waiting for the world to give you what you have already decided to give yourself. When no one cares, you learn to care for yourself. At first, this realization feels lonely, almost unbearable. You might find yourself asking, why must I always be the one to carry my own burdens? Why doesn't anyone see how heavy this is? But over time, you begin to understand that what feels like abandonment is actually life inviting you into your greatest strength. You realize that the absence of constant support is not a punishment. It is a call to discover your own resilience. There is a hidden power in the moment you stop looking around for someone else to fix you, save you, or lift you. That moment is the beginning of self-reliance. And though the road to it is not always easy, it is the road that leads to true freedom. Because when you depend on others to carry your load, your strength remains asleep. When you depend on yourself, your strength awakens. Think about how many times you've waited for someone to notice your struggle, only to be met with silence. Think about how many times you've longed for someone to give you the push you needed, only to find yourself standing still because no one did. In those moments, it is easy to feel invisible, even unloved. But what if those moments were never meant to break you? What if they were meant to teach you that you have everything you need inside of you already? What if, instead of looking outward, you turned inward and found the courage that was waiting for you? When you decide to become self-reliant, you stop waiting. You stop delaying your own growth, your own progress, your own dreams, for the hope that someone else will clear the path. You take the first step, even if no one is cheering, even if no one is watching, even if no one understands. And in doing so, you discover that your strength multiplies with each step. Self-reliance doesn't mean you shut people out. It doesn't mean you never accept help or kindness. It means you stop needing it as your foundation. It means you are no longer dependent on whether others rise or fall in order for you to keep moving. You may welcome support, but you do not collapse without it. You may appreciate encouragement, but you do not stall when it's absent. You carry yourself with the assurance that no matter who comes or goes, you will still rise. There is a particular kind of dignity in self-reliance. It is the dignity of looking in the mirror and saying, I am enough to begin. I am enough to continue. I am enough to finish. That doesn't mean you won't stumble. It doesn't mean you won't fall, but it means you refuse to stay on the ground waiting for someone to pick you up. You will brush the dirt off yourself, stand again, and walk forward. And every time you do, your confidence grows. Not the shallow confidence that comes from applause, but the deep-rooted confidence that comes from knowing you can trust yourself. Think of history, of the individuals who left legacies that shaped the world. None of them were carried on someone else's back the entire way. They faced rejection, ridicule, misunderstanding. They stood alone in their convictions when the world told them they were wrong. They built strength not by leaning endlessly on others, but by leaning on the quiet determination within themselves. That is the power of self-reliance. It turns you into someone who is unshakable because your stability is not built on shifting ground. There is a simple truth that many resist. No one is coming to save you. Not your family, not your friends, not your leaders. They may care for you, they may support you at times, but ultimately, you are the one who must decide how you live, how you rise, how you endure. This realization is not meant to harden your heart. It is meant to liberate it. Because when you stop waiting for a savior, you start becoming your own. Self-reliance is also the birth of self-respect. When you see yourself solving problems, carrying responsibilities, making decisions, you begin to value yourself in a new way. You no longer see yourself as a victim of circumstance, but as an active creator of your own path. And when you respect yourself, the world begins to respect you too. People sense when someone carries themselves with self-reliance. It is in the way you walk, the way you speak, the way you refuse to be broken by the absence of validation. This doesn't mean self-reliance is always easy. There will be days when you feel exhausted, days when the temptation to give up and wait for someone else to rescue you will feel overwhelming. But remember this, every time you choose to rely on yourself, you build a muscle that cannot be taken away. Unlike money, unlike possessions, unlike fleeting support, the muscle of self-reliance cannot be stolen. Once it is built, it is yours forever. When storms come, and they always do, self-reliance is the anchor that holds you steady. Others may abandon ship, others may panic, but you remain centered because you know you can endure. You know that while the world may not rush to care for you, you have learned to care for yourself. You have learned to find strength in solitude, to draw courage from your own spirit, and to keep moving forward no matter who is by your side. And strangely enough, once you embody self-reliance, you find that people are drawn to you, not because you beg for their attention, but because strength attracts. People respect those who stand tall without needing to be held up. People trust those who have proven they can carry themselves, and in that way, self-reliance not only sustains you, it elevates you in the eyes of others. So when life shows you that no one cares in the way you hoped, do not sink into despair. Take it as the invitation it truly is. An invitation to rise, to discover your own wings, to trust yourself in a way you never have before. Because once you become self-reliant, you are no longer fragile. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer bound by the limits of others. You are free, and in that freedom, you discover the most powerful truth of all. You are enough. When you understand that no one truly cares, you begin to see relationships in their raw and unfiltered truth. You begin to recognize that most people are not against you. They are simply for themselves. And that simple realization, though painful at first, brings clarity that saves you years of confusion, heartbreak, and wasted energy. It changes the way you look at family, at friendships, at love, at the bonds you thought were unbreakable. It teaches you that proximity is not loyalty, that smiles are not sincerity, and that words are not always aligned with action. When you strip away the illusions, you are finally able to see who is walking with you because they choose you, and who is walking with you only because it is convenient for them. So much of the suffering in human relationships comes not from what people do, but from what we expect them to do. We project loyalty where there is none. We assign importance to people who never earned it. We mistake someone's presence in a season of our life for a guarantee of permanence. But the truth is that most people are not thinking about us with the intensity we imagine. They are thinking about themselves, their needs, their burdens, their dreams. They are not malicious, just consumed by their own lives. And once you grasp this, you stop mislabeling relationships. You stop calling everyone a friend. You stop expecting everyone to be loyal. You stop giving the title of family to people who only share your blood but not your heart. This clarity is not meant to make you bitter. On the contrary, it makes you wiser, more discerning, and more at peace. Because when you stop confusing people's roles, you stop setting yourself up for disappointment. You no longer place a lifetime expectation on someone who was only meant to be a passing chapter. You no longer give the key to your heart to someone who was only meant to borrow your time. You no longer treat every smile as a promise, every hug as a vow. Instead, you learn to read actions louder than words. You learn to see patterns instead of excuses. You learn to accept people for who they are, not who you wish they were. Clarity of relationships also teaches you to value quality over quantity. The world teaches us to gather as many connections as possible, to measure our worth by how many friends we have, how many people like our pictures, how many show up to our celebrations. But when you understand that most people are not invested in your journey, you realize that numbers mean nothing. What matters are the few, the rare few, who walk with you when it's not convenient, who remember you when you are silent, who show up not because there's something in it for them, but because they choose to stand beside you. Those people may be few, but they are priceless. And when you stop crowding your life with false relationships, you finally make space to recognize and cherish the real ones. There is also a freedom in no longer trying to force people to play roles they were never meant to play. Too many times we exhaust ourselves trying to make someone love us the way we want, care the way we deserve, or show up the way we need. We bend, we plead, we compromise, hoping they will become what we imagined. But clarity teaches you to let people be who they are. If they are selfish, you accept it. If they are unreliable, you acknowledge it. If they are seasonal, you embrace it without making it eternal. You stop fighting reality, and in doing so, you stop wounding yourself with illusions. This understanding also saves you from betrayal, because betrayal, more often than not, comes from misplaced trust. We expect loyalty from someone who was never loyal to themselves. We expect honesty from someone who lies to their own reflection. We expect consistency from someone who has never kept a promise to themselves. When you see people clearly, you no longer set yourself up for those kinds of heartbreaks. Instead, you place trust where it belongs, in people whose actions have proven worthy of it, not in people whose words merely promised it. Clarity also softens the anger we carry toward others. When you realize that people are acting out of their own limitations, their own struggles, their own self-centeredness, you stop taking everything so personally. Their neglect is not always a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of their priorities. Their absence is not always about you. It is about where their energy is invested. Their silence is not always rejection. Sometimes it is simply distraction. And when you can see this clearly, you stop living offended. You stop carrying resentment like a heavy stone. You begin to forgive, not because you condone the hurt, but because you finally understand it wasn't about you to begin with. Clarity of relationships teaches you to protect your energy. When you stop giving equal access to everyone, you reclaim your peace. You no longer waste your time chasing after people who don't care. You no longer pour your heart into conversations that go unheard. You no longer exhaust yourself trying to keep connections alive that are already dead. Instead, you guard your energy for those who value it, for those who meet you halfway, for those who bring peace instead of chaos. And something beautiful happens when you begin to live with this clarity. You become lighter. You stop being burdened by constant disappointments. You stop being confused by people's actions. You stop carrying the weight of false expectations. You live free, knowing exactly who belongs where in your life. You know who to hold close, who to love from a distance, and who to release completely. Life is too short to mislabel relationships, to confuse convenience with care, or to live in denial about who people are. When you accept that most people are for themselves, not against you, you gain perspective. You stop crying over doors that close because you realize they were never meant to stay open. You stop begging for attention because you realize those who want to see you will find a way. You stop giving people more power than they deserve because you realize their place in your life was never as large as you imagined. Clarity is not loneliness, it is wisdom. It is the ability to see people as they are, and in doing so, to protect your own heart from unnecessary pain. It is the ability to recognize the rare souls who choose you, not out of need, not out of convenience, but out of love. Those few are worth more than 1,000 false ties. And when you walk in that clarity, your relationships may become fewer, but they will also become truer. And that truth is enough to sustain you. When you no longer live for the approval of others, decisions become simpler. Life itself becomes clearer, like a window washed of years of dust. So much of the weight we carry comes not from what we want, but from what we imagine others want for us. We hesitate before every choice, not because we don't know what to do, but because we are worried about what people will think. What will they say if I leave this job? What will they think if I walk away from this relationship? How will they judge me if I choose a path that looks different from theirs? These questions whisper in the back of our minds, and before we know it, our lives are no longer our own. But when you understand that no one is truly watching as closely as you think, when you understand that most people are too consumed by their own journey to weigh every step of yours, something powerful happens. You stop performing. You stop delaying choices because of imaginary critics in the stands. You realize the crowd is not even paying attention. And once that truth sinks in, you are free to choose what is right for you without the endless noise of other people's opinions. Simplicity in choices doesn't come from having fewer options. It comes from having fewer fears. It comes from detaching your worth from how people perceive your decisions. When your choices are no longer tied to external validation, the fog clears. The crossroads that once seemed overwhelming suddenly make sense because you are no longer asking, what do they want me to do? You are asking, what is right for me? What aligns with my heart, my purpose, my values? That shift changes everything. Think about how much time we waste seeking permission. Permission to follow our dreams, permission to take a risk, permission to be ourselves. We act as though our lives belong to the audience, and we forget that the stage was given to us alone. We wait for someone to nod, someone to clap, someone to say, yes, that's the right choice. But waiting for permission is the surest way to miss your own life. When you realize no one truly cares in the way you imagined, you stop waiting for permission and you give it to yourself. That's where simplicity begins. There is also a certain calm that comes with no longer trying to juggle everyone else's expectations. When you live for others, every decision feels heavy because it is weighed down with 1,000 voices pulling you in different directions. One person tells you to play it safe, another tells you to take risks. One insists you stay close to tradition, another urges you to break free. You stand in the middle, torn apart, trying to satisfy everyone and ending up pleasing no one, not even yourself. But when you finally say, this is my life and I choose for me, the noise fades. You no longer need to argue, defend, or explain. You no longer need to carry the burden of everyone's opinions. You simply walk forward, and in that walk, you feel the simplicity you've been craving. Simplicity in choices is not about always knowing the outcome. It is not about certainty. It is about clarity of intention. It is saying, I choose this not because it is guaranteed to succeed, but because it is true to me. That is all you can control anyway. The outcome is never fully in your hands, but the intention always is. And when you choose with honesty, even when the path is difficult, you can sleep at night knowing you did not betray yourself. We are often afraid to simplify our choices because we think it will make life smaller, but in truth, it makes life fuller. Complexity comes from trying to live multiple lives at once. The life your parents want, the life your friends admire, the life society approves of, and somewhere in the middle, the life you secretly long for. And with every no to the things that do not align, you create space for the yes that matters. So much of complexity comes from fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of judgment, fear of standing out. But fear loses its grip when you see the truth. People will judge anyway. People will misunderstand anyway. People will talk whether you succeed or fail. You cannot control their whispers, but you can control your own steps. And when you take ownership of those steps, life simplifies in the most powerful way. The beauty of living with simplicity in your choices is that it ripples into every part of your existence. Your relationships become simpler because you no longer entertain people who require you to betray yourself to keep them. Your work becomes simpler because you stop chasing titles and accolades that don't resonate with your soul. Your daily life becomes simpler because every yes and every no is aligned with your truth. You are no longer torn in 1,000 directions. You are whole, and you move in one steady direction forward. When you strip away the noise, when you let go of the need to please, when you stop performing for an audience that isn't watching, choices no longer paralyze you. They become clear, they become grounded, they become yours. And in that clarity, you finally taste the simplicity you've been searching for all along. So much of our suffering comes from comparison. We measure ourselves against others as if life were a race, as if joy were limited, as if success were a prize only one person could hold. We look to the left and to the right, and with every glance, we diminish the worth of our own journey. If someone shines brighter, we think our light is too dim. If someone runs faster, we think our pace is too slow. If someone gains applause, we question whether our silence means failure. And yet none of these comparisons tell the truth of who we are. They are illusions, distractions, thieves of peace. Comparison blinds us to our own uniqueness. It makes us forget that every path is different, every timeline is distinct, every purpose carved out in its own way. We look at someone else's chapter 10 and resent ourselves for being in chapter 2. We see someone's harvest and despise ourselves for still sowing seeds. But we forget that what looks like overnight success is often years of hidden struggle, unseen sacrifice, quiet labor. We forget that the person we envy may be envying someone else, caught in the same endless cycle of comparison. When you realize this, when you step back from the madness of measuring yourself against others, you begin to breathe easier. Life becomes lighter when you stop comparing. Because in truth, no one cares as deeply about your failures or triumphs as you think they do. People may notice for a moment, but then they return to their own lives, their own worries, their own dreams. And when you realize this, you understand that all the energy you spend trying to measure up is wasted. The audience you're performing for is too distracted to keep score. So why not put down the burden of comparison and walk freely in your own skin? Comparison is dangerous not only because it steals joy, but because it distorts identity. You begin to shape yourself not by your values, but by the values of others. You wear clothes you don't like, chase careers you don't love, entertain relationships that don't serve you, all because someone else's version of success has been held up as the standard. And slowly, without noticing, you lose yourself. You become a reflection of others' desires instead of an expression of your own. But when you liberate yourself from comparison, you find yourself again. You rediscover what you love, what makes you feel alive, what gives your life meaning, not because it impresses others, but because it nourishes you. There is also peace in realizing that no one's path invalidates yours. Someone else's success does not mean your failure. Someone else's blessing does not mean your lack. Life is not a competition for scarce resources. It is a garden where every flower has its time to bloom. The rose does not envy the sunflower. The oak does not compete with the pine. Each grows in its own space, in its own time, with its own beauty. And so it must be with us. When you free yourself from comparison, you learn to celebrate others without diminishing yourself. You learn to clap for someone else's victory while still walking confidently toward your own. Liberation from comparison also gives you back your focus. How much time have you lost scrolling through the highlight reels of others, measuring your behind the scenes against their carefully curated moments? How much energy have you wasted analyzing why someone has more, does more, or appears happier than you? That energy could have been building your own dreams, nurturing your own gifts, living your own truth. When you stop comparing, you reclaim that energy. You pour it back into your life, your growth, your journey, and what blooms from that reclaimed focus is far more beautiful than anything envy could ever produce. The freedom from comparison also deepens gratitude. When you're not busy measuring what you lack against what others have, you begin to notice the blessings that are already yours. You see the small victories, the quiet joys, the daily miracles that once went unnoticed. Gratitude grows when comparison dies, and with gratitude comes peace. Suddenly, you no longer need to be better than anyone else. You simply need to be present, to be thankful, to be alive in your own story. And strangely, when you stop comparing, you begin to succeed more authentically, because comparison keeps you distracted, chasing standards that were never meant for you. It keeps you running in circles, exhausted and empty. But when you step off that track, you finally have the space to move in alignment with your own gifts. You pursue what is true to you, not what looks good to others. And when you do that, success feels sweeter, not because it's bigger, but because it's yours. This liberation also makes failure less terrifying. When you compare, every failure feels like proof that you are less than someone else. But when you walk in your own lane, failure is simply part of the process. It is not measured against anyone else's pace, but only against your own growth. You begin to see failure as a teacher, not a humiliation. You begin to understand that it is only a step, not a verdict. And with that understanding, you move more boldly, take more risks, and live more freely. There will always be someone with more money, more beauty, more applause, more opportunities. If you live chained to comparison, you will always feel lacking, always feel late, always feel small. But when you realize that your worth is not measured in comparison to anyone else, you find abundance in simply being yourself. You understand that someone else's more has nothing to do with your enough. You see clearly that no one can live your story, no one can carry your soul, no one can replace your place in this world. Liberation from comparison is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Each day you must remind yourself, I am not them, I am me, and that is enough. Each day you must resist the temptation to measure your steps by someone else's stride. Each day you must return to the truth that your path is yours alone, and in time those reminders become your freedom. When you break free from comparison, you reclaim your joy, your identity, your peace. You stop living as a shadow of someone else's dream and start living as the light of your own. And in that freedom, life becomes simple. You no longer race against anyone. You simply walk steadily, honestly, beautifully in the direction of your own truth. There is no greater gift you can give yourself or to the world than authenticity. To be authentic is to strip away the masks, to let go of the roles you've been assigned, to stop bending yourself into shapes just to be accepted. Authenticity is not about perfection, and it is not about performance. It is about truth. It is about standing firmly in who you are, without apology, without disguise, without shame. When you understand that most people are too absorbed in their own lives to care deeply about how you are living yours, a kind of liberation comes. That liberation is the space where authenticity is born. We spend so much of our lives pretending to be stronger than we are, pretending to be happier than we feel, pretending to be more certain than we could ever possibly be. We put on masks because we fear rejection, because we fear ridicule, because we believe that to be accepted, we must be something other than ourselves. And yet, the irony is that the very thing we run from, the revelation of our real selves, is the very thing that draws people closest to us. People are not inspired by masks, they are inspired by truth. People do not connect with perfection, they connect with vulnerability. When you choose authenticity, you set yourself free from the exhausting labor of pretending. Think of how much energy it takes to maintain an image, to uphold a facade, to keep all the masks in place. It drains you, it makes life heavy. But when you step into authenticity, you reclaim that energy. You live lighter, freer, more at ease. You do not need to remember the role you are playing because you are no longer playing a role. You are simply being. Authenticity also clarifies your relationships. When you show up as your true self, you invite others to do the same. Some people will leave because they were only attached to the version of you that served them. But those who remain, those who lean in, those who embrace the unfiltered you, those are the ones who matter. Authenticity acts like a sieve, separating those who are drawn to your essence from those who were drawn to your mask. And though the process can be painful, it is ultimately liberating. For what is the point of being loved if the love is not for who you truly are? Being authentic also makes life simpler because it removes the constant need for approval. When you live inauthentically, you are enslaved to the opinions of others. You shift with their moods, you bend with their expectations, you rise and fall with their applause. But when you live authentically, you are anchored in your own truth. Approval becomes a bonus, not a necessity. You no longer beg for validation because your worth is not up for debate. You know who you are, and that knowledge is enough. But authenticity requires courage. It asks you to reveal your wounds, to speak your truth, to walk in your own skin, even when others don't understand. And courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means choosing to show up anyway, to say, this is me. I may not be perfect, I may not be polished, but I am real. There is power in that honesty. There is beauty in that rawness, because when you strip away the performance, what remains is the very essence of your humanity. And it is in that essence that connection thrives. Think about the moments that have moved you most deeply, not the ones where someone impressed you with their perfection, but the ones where someone revealed their truth. The friend who admitted they were struggling and allowed you to comfort them. The speaker who shared their failures as openly as their successes. The stranger who smiled through tears and made you feel less alone. Authenticity bridges the gap between souls because it reminds us that we are all human, all imperfect, all trying. There is also strength in authenticity because it grounds you in purpose. When you are authentic, you make choices not to please others, but to honor yourself. You take jobs, build relationships, create art, and pursue dreams that align with your deepest values, not with someone else's checklist of success. And in doing so, you create a life that feels true. A life that, when you look back, you will not regret, because it was lived on your terms. So many people trade authenticity for acceptance, only to find that acceptance built on falsehood is hollow. It does not sustain. It does not nourish. But when you live authentically, even if fewer people applaud, the applause you receive will matter because it will be real. Even if fewer people walk beside you, the companionship will matter because it will be true. Authenticity does not guarantee that everyone will love you, but it guarantees that the love you receive will be genuine, and that is worth infinitely more. Authenticity also gives birth to resilience, because when you are pretending, every criticism feels like a threat. Every judgment feels like exposure. But when you are authentic, criticism loses its sting. You may not like it, but it cannot destroy you because you are not hiding. There is nothing to expose because you are already standing in the open. You are not pretending to be flawless. You are simply being human. And there is unshakable strength in being human without shame. Living authentically also creates a ripple effect. When you give yourself permission to be real, you give others permission to do the same. Your honesty becomes a light for those still trapped in darkness. Your vulnerability becomes a safe space for others to release their masks. And in this way, authenticity not only frees you, it frees the world around you. It shows others that it is possible to live without pretending, possible to be loved without performing, possible to be whole without perfection. There will always be voices urging you to conform, to play the part, to blend in. The world rewards masks because masks are comfortable, predictable, easy to categorize. But greatness, joy, peace, they are not found in masks. They are found in authenticity. They are found in the courage to stand tall in your flaws, your scars, your truths. The gift of authenticity is not something you wait for others to give you. It is something you decide to claim. You claim it each time you choose honesty over approval, each time you reveal instead of conceal, each time you embrace your story instead of rewriting it to please the crowd. And in time, this gift transforms you. You begin to live not as a performance, but as a presence. Not as an actor, but as a soul. To live authentically is to finally be at peace with yourself. To no longer need to chase after what you are not, to no longer need to hide what you are, to no longer spend your days rehearsing a life that is not your own. The gift of authenticity is freedom. The gift of authenticity is wholeness. The gift of authenticity is you as you are without disguise, and that is enough. There is a strength unlike any other that comes when you discover inner peace. It is not loud, it is not boastful, it is not a power that needs to announce itself. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. Inner peace is the kind of strength that allows you to walk into storms and remain calm, to be surrounded by noise and still hear your own heartbeat, to face rejection, loss, or betrayal and still keep your center. Many people chase power in the form of influence, money, or control, but the greatest power is the ability to keep your spirit steady when everything else around you is shifting. That is the strength of inner peace. Peace begins with acceptance. So much of our suffering comes not from what happens to us, but from our resistance to it. We wrestle with life, we argue with reality, we fight battles we cannot win. We want people to be different than they are. We want the past to change. We want outcomes to unfold according to our timeline. But inner peace is born the moment you release the need to control what you cannot control. It is the moment you exhale and say, "This is where I am, this is what is, and I will make my home here in this moment." Acceptance is not resignation, it is strength. It is the courage to face life as it is and not as you wish it to be. Inner peace also grows when you let go of unnecessary battles. Not every comment deserves your response. Not every insult deserves your attention. Not every storm is meant for you to walk into. When you understand that most people are caught up in their own chaos, you stop taking their chaos personally. You stop letting their anger dictate your mood, their insecurities dictate your worth, their noise dictate your silence. Inner peace gives you the power to say, "I choose not to participate in this battle. I choose to protect my energy." That choice again and again is how you remain strong. There is a misconception that peace is passive, that it means you are indifferent or detached. But true inner peace is active. It takes tremendous courage to stay calm when others are losing themselves to rage. It takes discipline to breathe when the world is telling you to fight. It takes wisdom to walk away instead of lashing out. Peace is not weakness. It is mastery. It is self-control in its highest form. It is the refusal to be ruled by fear, anger, or despair. Think of the strongest trees. They are not the ones that never face storms. They are the ones that have learned to bend without breaking, to root themselves deeply so that no wind can uproot them. That is what inner peace does to the human spirit. It roots you so deeply in yourself that external storms cannot shake you. It allows you to bend with the winds of change, the disappointments, the betrayals, and still remain standing. Peace makes you resilient because it means your strength is not dependent on conditions outside of you. Inner peace also clarifies your vision. When your mind is calm, you see more clearly. You make wiser decisions because you are not reacting from panic or anger. You speak with intention because you are not rushing to defend yourself. You listen more fully because you are not busy preparing your reply. Peace sharpens your perception so you can distinguish what truly matters from what is simply noise. And in a world that constantly tries to pull you into distractions, inner peace is your shield, your filter, your compass. And the truth is, peace is contagious. When you cultivate it within yourself, you influence the atmosphere around you. People can feel it. They may not always have words for it, but they sense it. Your calm becomes a refuge for others. Your presence becomes grounding. Your words become healing. Your silence becomes a comfort. In a society addicted to noise and chaos, a peaceful soul is revolutionary. It is a reminder that it is possible to live differently, to move more slowly, to breathe more deeply, to respond more wisely. But inner peace requires practice. It does not arrive all at once. It is built moment by moment, choice by choice. It comes when you choose forgiveness over resentment, gratitude over complaint, stillness over distraction, reflection over reaction. It comes when you wake up each day and decide not to hand over your spirit to the world's storms. The practice of peace is lifelong, but every step toward it makes you stronger. One of the greatest lessons of peace is that happiness and strength are not found in circumstances, they are found within. Many people postpone their peace. They say, I will be calm when I get this job, when I earn this money, when this person loves me, when this problem ends. But peace delayed is peace denied. If your peace depends on external conditions, it will always be fragile. Someone will always disappoint you. Something will always go wrong. Life will always shift. True inner peace comes when you anchor yourself, not in the changing world, but in your unchanging center. It comes when you decide, no matter what happens around me, I will protect what is within me. There is nothing the world can give you that compares to the strength of inner peace. When you have it, rejection does not define you because you are secure in yourself. Failure does not destroy you because you know it is not final. Loneliness does not consume you because you have learned to befriend your own soul. And even success does not control you because you know that true fulfillment is not measured in applause, but in alignment with your spirit. The strength of inner peace is the strength to live free from constant turmoil. It is the strength to show up to life as it is, not as you wish it to be. It is the strength to smile in the face of adversity, to forgive when you have every reason not to hope when everything around you whispers despair. It is a quiet kind of strength, but it is the kind that outlasts storms, the kind that sustains through loss, the kind that cannot be taken away. So hear me when I say this. Do not fear the truth that no one cares. Embrace it. It is not cruelty. It is clarity. It does not weaken you. It frees you. It strips away the noise, the games, the illusions, and leaves you standing in your own power. When you know that no one cares, you finally understand. Life is not about waiting to be seen. It is about seeing yourself. It is not about waiting to be carried. It is about walking your own path with unshakable resolve. And when you do, you discover the sweetest paradox of all. When you no longer need anyone to care, the right people, those rare and precious souls, will show up, not because you need them, but because they choose to walk with you. And that, my friends, is simplicity. That is freedom. That is life.